Thank you so much for everybody just being here. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday here to find new ways to better ourselves in the drone industry. Just what an absolute blessing it is to be here with you all. We've been traveling all around doing manned aviation seminars and unmanned aviation seminars. I'm truly just so thankful to be here with you all. A little bit about myself, in case you don't know, I am an FAA certificated flight instructor, and this year just passed over 10,000 hours in manned aviation, so very fortunate for that. I am much older than I look, not as old as Ken Herron, but much older than I really look. So anyways, AOPA, that's the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, their outstanding flight instructor, a few years as well with that. Now, how we got started on this journey is really using drones in our manned aviation, just from a cinematic standpoint. That's my 1940s J3 Cub that we fly around. And we started doing this, and we've been teaching FAA test prep for manned aviation from private pilot all the way up through, you want to be an airline pilot as we go through that process. So when the FAA almost 4 years ago now said, hey, we're going to come out with a written test for this Part 107 regulation space, we need some test prep for it. So this is like private pilot light version, right? You got your METARs and your TAFs and your airspace and everything else. Stuff we were already teaching. It was such a great logical progression for us, and it was something we were already doing. That's a place called Cedar Key, Florida, and that's our airplane 23 Mike Zulu, really the star of the show with that. So we fly all around teaching FAA test prep now, from flying drones up to it's your dream to be an airline pilot. And if you've been through Remote Pilot 101, you've heard me say this a million times, it's that if you ever wanted to be in manned aviation, after taking that Part 107 test, you're like a heartbeat away from doing it. Who can agree with that after learning all that stuff you had to learn, right? It's so crazy. We're up to now 64,000 past tests through remotepilot101.com, which is just outstanding when you consider there's around 120,000 tests taken. Having about 50% of the market is just phenomenal. And working with some of the biggest names we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about UPS and what they're up to a little bit as well. But we did the tactical drone flying course for NYPD, where we literally went out to NYPD's tactical air response unit, and we were teaching them to kick down doors. I didn't teach the kicking down door part. I figured they were way better at kicking down doors. But kicking down doors and flying drones in instead of sending in a human life. NYPD actually wants to have a Mavic in the trunk of every squad car, because they're tired of all the workman's comp claims in the winter of an officer slipping on the ice and slipping on the snow. When somebody runs, they want to be able to dispatch that Mavic in 2 minutes and follow the person that way with the Mavic instead. Very, very cool things happening in that space, and all the spaces that we really work in with that. But with this, I was poised with the question of what is the best way to prepare students for their Part 107 certification? And when I teach, I believe in teaching really two philosophies. The first is there has to be real-world applicability to everything. I never want to teach you just to pass a test. My vision, my dream is for you to be a safe, real-world operator, and that's what we're going to work on a little bit here today. The second thing is it needs to be scenario-based training, because who knows, and this goes for any profession just about, what they teach me in the books and what happens out there in the real world are often two different things, aren't they? So we need to teach scenario-based training. So I want to work you through today what I believe are three of, we'll call them the most difficult questions on the Part 107 test. The first one is just on the initial course. The last two are on the recurrent course as well, so be mindful of where you're at in your training. Who remembers METARs and TAFs if you've taken your 107? Wasn't that a fun language to learn, right? You're probably groaning at the thought of that. Let's talk about this. If you are about to take your initial test, this is a question you're going to see. This will not be on your recurrent test. There is no weather questions on the recurrent test. Let's read this here together, then I'll show you figure 15. This is a brush up for everybody. How does the weather change from 2200 Zulu, remember we operate in Zulu time, UTC time, Universal Time Coordinated, to 0200 Zulu? Lightning will start, the ceiling drops from 1500 to 800, or the skies become clear. Well, let's go ahead and let's look at that figure taken right from the FAA, and let's look at that TAF in this unique language that we get to learn that is TAFs. And I'll step over, I'll work on this screen, and I'll come back to the other screen to help those. The question was, how does the weather change from 2200 to 0200 Zulu time? And our options were, lightning will start, the ceiling drops from 1500 to 800, and the skies become clear. Let's read through this here together again, because this is like a whole foreign language. For some of you, this might just be a refresher here. Let's start at the top with the from, FM 2200. The first three numbers there, the 330, that is the wind direction. The winds are from 330 at what velocity? 15 knots. The G means we are gusting to 20. So that will be read, winds from 330 at 15 knots, gust 20 is the appropriate way to read that. However, ABC mentions nothing about wind, so let's keep moving on here. The P6SM that you see there, the P means greater than 6 statute miles of visibility. Next, we see BKN, broken. Remember, the definition of a ceiling is the lowest broken or overcast layer. Broken, 1500. Overcast, OVC, 2,500 feet. Now, this is truly important to us, right? And I'm gonna go over the other screen so I don't neglect this side of the room here as well. This is important because we know how high we can fly, right? 400 feet AGL. We know where we can go up to. I need to know where the clouds are at because I have to stay 500 feet below those clouds. So this is important to know. But again, broken clouds, 1,500. Overcast clouds, 2,500. After that, there's something called a prob 40. Probability, and it's a 40% chance, prob 40. There's a prob 30 and a prob 40. I apologize, I'm going fast, but prob 40. There's a 40% chance that put a number between the 22 and the 02, that between 2200 and 0200, these will be the conditions. 3 statute miles, SH is showers, RA is rain. Okay, we accomplished 2200 Zulu. Right? It takes us a little bit of time. 0200 Zulu. I didn't hear anything about lightning, by the way. I did hear about a ceiling. Maybe the skies become clear. Let's see what happens at 0200 Zulu. 0200 Zulu, I'll go a little bit faster. Winds from 350 at 12 knots. From 350 at 12 knots. Overcast, OVC, at 800. Now, this is important. This is a good lesson here, too. The 8 is in the hundredths place, 800. If it was here in the middle, it'd be 8,000. If it was all the way to the left, it'd be 80,000 feet. They're not gonna forecast clouds up at 80,000 feet. It doesn't even apply to us at manned aviation unless we're flying a SR-71 or something like that, right? Overcast clouds at 800 feet. Now, I think I can jump ahead because B looks like the best answer. The ceiling, remember the definition of a ceiling, the lowest broken or overcast layer. In our example, the broken layer is less than this overcast layer in the 2200 Zulu mark. So the ceiling's 1500. However, in a few hours, remember a TAF is a terminal aerodrome forecast. We're forecasting this weather into the future. The ceiling's going to drop to 800 feet. B is our correct answer. I told you I picked the 3 toughest ones, at least I thought toughest ones. So if you're aspiring to take your Part 107, don't be discouraged. I picked the tough ones. There's plenty of easy ones in there. Let's do another one here together. These require some thinking, and as I will tell everyone, you have to slow down on the Part 107. Yes?
Jason, let's mention that once the ceiling comes to 800, if we can fly to 4, we're no longer really far, so we can only fly
to 300. He's exactly right. He was saying, listen, the ceiling comes down to 800 or 700. I have to stay 500 feet below those clouds. So yes, the maximum altitude I can fly is 400 feet AGL, but but I also have to stay 500 feet below the clouds. There's a little subtraction that we have to do to comply with those regulations. And in part 107, it says 500 feet below the clouds. It doesn't say ceiling, like this broken or overcast layer. It could be a few, scattered, broken, overcast. That's how the FAA defines cloud layers. Any clouds, we have to stay below. Thank you for that. Very, very good point. These next questions, like all of them, require you to slow down. This isn't something you can race through. Slow down, and let's read this one here together. An ATC radar facility issues the following advisory to a manned aircraft pilot flying north in a calm wind, as if that's important, but we'll get to that. Unmanned aircraft operations, 9 o'clock, 2 miles. Where should the remote PIC and crew, if applicable, look for this traffic? Well, if you're like me, I'm a visual learner, okay? And there's a lot happening in this question. I'm a visual learner. Let's draw it out. Let's start with, I need to figure out where north is. I'm just going to draw a line straight up, and we're going to call that north. Anybody disagree with that? Let's just call it north for now. All right? Now, in manned aviation, when we're flying, ATC gives us traffic alerts in relation to a 12-hour clock, like this. So they say traffic 12 o'clock, the traffic's right in front of me. So in this case, the call is unmanned aircraft operations, 9 o'clock, 2 miles. So if I was in the airplane, 9 o'clock, 2 miles away. However, this is a trick question. Read the very end of it again for everybody who wanted to jump up and say, look west. West isn't the answer. The question is, where should the remote PIC and crew look? This is the question everybody gets wrong. I've spoken to so many people who, Jason, I got a 98 on the test. And let me tell you the one question I got wrong. And it's because they were rushing. They drew all this out, but they were just, oh, it's the west, 9 o'clock, got it. Everything's perfect. No, it's not the correct answer. Where would they end up looking for this traffic? Let's do another one here. You're flying, the fonts kind of change when we switch computers, so I'll read this to you here. You're flying at a nearby airport while monitoring the CTAF, that's our Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. An aircraft announces that it's departing the runway 36, utilizing a right traffic pattern. Will the aircraft potentially conflict with your operation? Again, I'm very much a visual learner. Let's draw this sort of stuff out here. All right? So the aircraft's departing runway 36. I'm operating, and it's cut off in these fonts. I apologize. You're operating out to the northeast in this case. The fonts cut it out. That's why in the last one the circle didn't line up because the fonts jumbled here. You're operating northeast of a nearby airport. You monitor the CTAF. The aircraft announces it's departing runway 36, utilizing a right traffic pattern. Will the aircraft potentially conflict with your operation? Let's draw it here. 36. Which way is a runway 36 heading? We're heading out to the north. 3618. It's a north-south runway. How do we know that? Runways, their orientation, we're on a 360-degree compass, right? Now the real question is, which end is 36? 36 is the bottom. You remember this because think of it this way. If I am in the airplane on the runway, on runway 36, my compass says 36. So I'm heading to the north. In order to be heading to the north, I have to start at the bottom, start at the south end to be heading to the north of that runway. Always picture, okay, if I'm sitting in an airplane, what would my compass and my instrument panel say? It would say 360 or runway 3618 is the other end, okay? So, will the aircraft potentially conflict with your operation? So the aircraft departs. It departs on the leg of the traffic pattern first called the upwind. They also said in this question they're utilizing a right traffic pattern. So it makes a right crosswind turn, a right downwind turn. And again, I apologize, all that's overlapping because of the font issue. They make a right base turn, and they turn final for runway 36. At the top of the question said, we are flying out to the northeast. Will there be a potential conflict now? that we drew it out? The answer is yes, and there's only one answer that says yes. I don't think my circle's gonna line up again. No, it's just because the fonts are screwed up. Anyways, yes, the aircraft may overfly northeast of the airport. And this is important too, because in manned aviation, when I am turning my upwind, I turn my upwind around 300-400 feet, and I'm making this turn here. About this point, I'm only about 600 or 700 feet in manned aviation. That could be a true conflict. However, this could be a class Gulf airport. You have every right to be flying your drone there. There's absolutely no issues. We need to be smart in these situations. Those last two questions are on the recurrent test here today. And these are the two questions on the recurrent test that keep people from getting 100%. Slow down, draw them out. For my initial test takers, there's some METARs, there's some TAFs, but as anyone here will tell you, it's heavy on airspace. It's heavy on something called VFR sectional charts, our road maps in the sky. Again, I'm not here to give a sales presentation by any means, but myself and the team at Remote Pilot 101, that's what we do, is try to break these subjects down into plain English. But I want to spend some time now, my last little bit of time I have with you, on discussing where is the industry going from a regulatory standpoint. That's my specialty. I love diving into the regs. I love seeing what these steering committees are doing or not doing in some cases to see where things are going with that. So what's coming? Really, there's two big things on the horizon. One's closer than the other. And the first is beyond visual line of sight operations. I'm happy to go on record here that I truly believe beyond visual line of sight operations will be available to, we'll say, just the general public, us as Part 107 operators, much easier than the waiver process in 2020. A big reason that is what UPS is doing and some other things we're going to talk about here in a second. But I truly believe beyond visual line of sight will happen in 2020. Now, as an entrepreneur and a capitalist, I hope there's a test you have to take for it, because I'll happily produce the test materials for it. I don't know if that's the case. That much we don't know. It might be a little online test, but it would be an additional certification. Think how manned aviation works. In manned aviation, you earn your private pilot certificate, and that allows you to fly in VFR weather conditions, decent weather conditions. However, if I want to fly in the clouds and in poor weather conditions, I have to continue my training and earn an instrument rating. For those of you who are familiar with manned aviation a little bit, I believe we're going to have additional certificates, additional ratings in unmanned aviation. You start with your initial Part 107, and you want to do beyond visual line of sight operations. Okay, it's a 20-question test to do that. Or maybe we get to the point where they're actually doing a flying test itself. That's something they do not do, but have spoken about. Currently, right now, they're actually working on a hobbyist test, by the way, just to keep. I know there's some who say, Jason, I just want to be a hobbyist. I'm cool with that. Well, remember they flip-flop how many times on hobbyists need to register? No, hobbyists don't need to register. No, you need to register again. They can't make up their mind on that. They're doing a similar thing right now with possibly having hobbyists even take some FAA aeronautical test similar to this as well. That's perhaps a few years out, but just something else to keep in mind. But I believe beyond visual line of sight operations, based on my contacts at the FAA and the steering committees that are working and the lobbyists that are pulling for it from the big corporations, I believe that's going to happen in 2020 here. The next thing that needs to be on your radar is something called UTM. And I have there plus, it kind of fades in the blue, plus remote ID. If you want something fun to look up UTM. This is unmanned traffic management. Airbus just launched their UTM on Monday. NASA has a UTM out right now, and they're all bidding for basically control of unmanned traffic operations. They want to own the airspace and control the airspace below 400 feet. Now, this, I don't want to sway you any direction because I don't even have all the facts on it just yet. But something we need to be mindful of. I appreciate them wanting to control the airspace and how they want to issue it right now. I was at a conference speaking with one of the developers from Airbus literally 2 days ago. And he was saying literally you would hop on the DJI app, You would say, I need this block of airspace at this time. It would reserve it for you. It would keep manned aircraft operations out around your little bubble. Any unmanned operations, it would keep it all out of your little bubble, and that would be your bubble for, say, 30 minutes. And it'd be like a bidding process for airspace, which is very interesting to me. One thing we need to be careful of is Class Gulf airspace is a wonderful thing. Class G, uncontrolled airspace, is a wonderful thing. I want to go fly, we flew out back because of the airspace that we're in, right? Class Gulf airspace allows us to fly. They're talking about maybe even controlling that. So something else just to be careful of and mindful of. This is not the FAA. This is big corporates just trying to get a better handle of the airspace system. They say it's for our good, and maybe it is. I don't have enough facts on that just yet. Something to add to your notes, though, and to look up more on is UTM. NASA and Airbus have the biggest right now. Remote ID is the other thing. DJI launched their first kind of forte into ADS-B technology. They have ADS-B in technology right now that allows you on the Enterprise Edition to see manned air traffic. I truly believe that if the FAA doesn't use ADS-B, they're going to use some sort of remote ID. At the Atlanta Hartsfield Airport, every single vehicle, every single tug, every single beverage, the guys driving the catering trucks have ADS-B on them, which allows the ground controller to see, oh, this is beverage cart 1, this is tug 7 that's pulling this airplane out right now, and they can see everything. And a goal is to have this same remote ID system in unmanned aviation to allow the FAA to see who's flying, who's doing what, and they've been very, very lax with airspace violations right now because it's very, very hard to prove anything, right? Unless there's an accident, unless there's a crash, they can't prove everything. But when you have ADS-B and your registration number is flying across a radar screen right now through someone's airspace or through a TFR, temporary flight restriction, you're probably going to get a nasty gram in the mail that you need to be aware of. So just be mindful of that. We're not there yet, but this is where the industry is going with these sort of things. And of course, I'm always doing my best to keep you on the forefront of that and see what that really means for us, because we're all about sharing this airspace and keeping it as available as possible. Lance has done a good job of that, for the most part. This is a facility map of Bergstrom, actually. But Lance has its flaws as well. How the Lance system was actually created. This is a facility map. For those of you who don't know, Lance allows us to basically get almost instantaneous permission to fly in controlled airspace. But there is no science to these facility maps. The true story that many people don't know how these facility maps were even created is every control facility was sent a blank grid and was told to draw in their airport diagram to the best of their scale and write a number of where they want drones, how high they want drones to go. So you have some tower manager, some junior manager, some apprentice. Hey, can you fill this out for me? The FAA is asking me to do this. That filled out all our facility maps. So if you ever look at a facility map and go, why is it that way? It was the mood the gentleman or the lady that was filling it out that day was in, truthfully. So Bergstrom makes sense. If you look, we've got north-south runways. It's actually I pulled this one up this morning. It's actually quite smart. We have north-south runways, so thus we have 0 through most of this area. We're protecting the instrument approach procedures coming from the north and south. It makes sense. And they kind of give us rain up to 400 feet out here in their airspace as well. This one's good, but I've seen some that just don't even make sense. They allow you 100 feet kind of everywhere. They're not protecting anything. Facility maps are a good step in the right direction, but it just wasn't executed as well as it could have been. So anyways, those are just kind of some updates, some practice questions to kind of get you thinking as well about that upcoming recurrent test, about taking that initial test. I have some postcards in the back. If you all need anything with that, you can contact us as well, remotepilot101.com, and that's our office number there. We have a great team out to serve you, and I'm happy at this point if Kelly wants to be mic runner, take any questions, anything regulatory, any state of the industry, a bunch of questions over there.
Right here.
Yeah.
Hey, so I've noticed since they changed the Before You Fly app,
Yes.
There used to be a lot of heliports and so forth that would show up and say, no, you can't fly now. Now it says you're good to go. Did the rules change? What's up?
So you're talking from a hobbyist standpoint then?
Yeah.
Yes. From a hobbyist standpoint, remember what happened. Remember the history of the Before You Fly app. The Before You Fly app was at first a well-intentioned forte into iOS development for the government, and it didn't work out as well. They've since subbed that out. I can't remember the name of the company, escapes me now, but they've since subbed out that information. And the Before You Fly used to be so restrictive of there's a hospital here with a helipad and there's this here. And this guy thought about making an airport on his farm, so he probably can't fly there. It's not that it's become less restrictive, it's gotten how it should have been. Absolutely, if you're not in controlled airspace, you can fly near that hospital heliport that's probably up over 400 feet anyways, right? It used to restrict you basically everywhere, it seemed like. Now it knows this is Class Golf airspace, this is Class Echo airspace, and everything else. That's that. Yes?
So for the UTM Plus, if you're flying with a buddy and both of you are flying drones, you just said you can't have two bubbles overlapping.
It's very interesting. The question is if we have two people. Airbus right now is a centralized system, which is exactly what you're saying. It's I bid on this airspace, I have it from 1 to 130, it can be your airspace afterwards. A flaw I was thinking of on the travel here of this system is what if we're dealing with like the version of high-frequency traders of airspace, right? And they use computer algorithms to get in there and grab all their airspace and just hold it from people like you and I. So there's got to be a solution to that. People get very smart with computers and everything else. That would be a fear of a system. Again, that's Airbus is starting to roll that out a little bit now, and we'll see how it goes. Obviously, right now, it's just integrated with Lance. So we'll see where that goes. Yes?
All right, so the news guy's going to give you two tough ones.
I'm ready.
This is opinionated, okay? First one,
I love opinionated questions.
I want to know your opinion on the bill that's currently being put through for them to regulate or give cities and states the ability to regulate space over private property.
This is the Utah senator, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
200 feet. That's the first question. The
Yes.
second question is, with DJI potentially releasing a sub 250 gram drone,
Yes.
and thus pushing the rest of the market to start releasing drones that fall underneath the weight
107,
limit
yes.
of the FAA guidance, what is your opinion is going to happen? Is the FAA going to change their rules and drop the weight limit? Or are they going to have different regulations for those types of drones?
Great question. Both great questions. I'll start with the first, and to catch everybody up, I can't remember his name, a senator in Utah is coming out pitching for the idea of cities, municipalities should control their own airspace. If you look back, there's been lawmaking that's already happened on this. In our neck of the woods, the mayor of Orlando, Florida, tried to come out and say, no, I want no drones over my city unless it's a city contract or whatever it is. We want no drones over our city. He got squashed in court and paid a ton of fines. So there's already plenty of lawmaking in place. No offense to the senator. I'm sure he's a fantastic person. However, these cities and these municipalities need to worry more about their waste management and then their transportation and their everything else. Don't worry about the airspace. Focus on the ground and everything else. This is what the FAA has been doing, and let them continue to handle it with that. Your second question was with DJI. They're just talking right now, I believe. I don't think it's even a named project yet, is it? Mavic Mini is what it's going, okay. A less than 250 gram drone, which would mean it would not apply to the rules and regulations of Part 107. That one, how it's been explained to me is the FAA, and we have a few little contacts in that department, is going to take a back seat and watch and see what happens in that regard. If this thing sells like crazy, which most DJI things tend to do for the most part, just ask GoPro. Whenever DJI releases a camera that competes with them, it's not good, right? I think they're going to sit back and watch and see, but the FAA is slow to change things sometimes too. It'd be certainly something to keep on the radar if they drop that. But the AMA and all these other organizations are going to raise a big stink about something like that because now you're infringing on some model territory. Yes, my friend.
You mentioned the recurrent exam and that there's no weather on the recurrent exam.
Correct.
What are they emphasizing on that exam?
Charts on the recurrent exam.
Sectional?
Sectional charts and airspace. Anybody here taking the recurrent exam can confirm or deny that as well? A few have taken it? Yeah, it is chart and airspace heavy with that. So really studied on that. You don't have to worry about weather. Obviously, regs are still going to be on there. Weather's taken out. Weight and balance is taken out. Remember, we had some fixed-wing drone questions with CG and everything else. You're thinking, I fly a quadcopter. Like, why am I getting quizzed? And there's still a CG for sure, but not in the fixed-wing dynamic. Mr. Heron, please.
What is the future of daytime waiver process for the FAA, and will daytime waivers ever be integrated perhaps into the land system? My second question is, which one of your watches is your favorite? I yield my time.
I'll come back to the watch question in a second, but that is a fantastic question. Daytime waivers. I learned something very, very interesting. I was at the Drone Deploy conference, is where I last was, just 2 days ago. And Drone Deploy has their own daytime, or which is really nighttime flying, we'll just call it nighttime flying for now, nighttime flying course that you go through. And if you have a job that requires you to fly at night, you fly off of Drone Deploy's daytime waiver. Drone Base, anybody ever flown with Drone Base to make some extra money like that? Yes? Drone Base as well now has their own daylight waiver. They will let Jason Schappert go out and operate on their daylight waiver, allowing me to fly at night. Because I mean, think like roof inspections. If you do inspection stuff, you want to be within about 30 minutes after sunset for the greatest effectiveness of the floor cameras and everything else. That's a big step for the FAA to say, Jace, let's say Remote Pilot 101 gets a daytime waiver certificate, and anybody who uses Remote Pilot 101, you watch these 4 videos and you can use Jason's waiver. Now, when you throw it through someone's pool screen at night and they come after me, I'm probably not going to be too happy. But I think it's a bit. I was totally unaware that was even an option until last weekend. So I think that's going places with that. Your watch question. Everybody wants to know about the 2 watches, and Ken, you don't even know this story. So at Remote Pilot 101 and m0a.com, our manned aviation business, and I'll make this my last question, Kelly. We do about 3,000 support tickets per month. We get a lot of questions. Many of you have used our live chat, talked to our team on the phone, everything else. So for a support ticket to end up on my desk is a rare thing, because we have 19 team members who handle it all. And one day I have this request, and on it is from a gentleman named Ken Heron. And Ken said, hey, I made this review video of Remote Pilot 101. I just wanted to send it to you guys so you're aware of it. This is the first time I ever heard of Ken Heron. This is like way, way back at the very, very beginning. And Ken, in his usual bubbly personality, is talking all about how great Part 107 is, how great this course is, Remote Pilot 101. And he ends by saying this. He goes, and just look at Jason's dreamy eyes. And by the way, he wears 2 watches, and you should buy Remote Pilot 101. Or something to that extent. Typical Ken Heron fashion, as you can imagine. And the funny part about it is, and this is truly not a joke, at the time I was training for like a race, and I was wearing an Apple Watch as a fitness band and just my regular dress watch. And Ken Heron, I shot all those videos with the 2 watches because we were just cranking them out, not even thinking of it. And Ken Heron has pigeonholed me into being the 2-watch man because that review video just gained a ton of traction. And now everybody, if they see me not wearing 2 watches, like, what are you not wearing 2 watches for? So anytime I do a drone conference, I now wear 2 watches, and it's only because Ken Heron pigeonholed me into being the 2-watch guy. So that is the true reason. Thank you.